Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday, Crystal. It's a sad show, but we've got some interesting stuff today.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, it's another grim morning in America. The president's set to speak at 10 on these mass shootings that occurred over the weekend. We've got all the latest for you. We'll talk about everything that's relevant here today on Rising. What are you looking at, Saagar?
I'm taking a look also at this national sickness, and then that's really what it is. There's no other way to call it. And I have a special message for people who are on the right, conservatives who believe in immigration restriction, which is that the onus is upon you, it's upon us, to call out the hateful elements who might actually believe the same thing. You have to draw the most fierce boundary for those white nationalists, like the person who shot up this Walmart in El Paso, and say, you are not a part of us, we want nothing to do with you, and it is explicit upon us in order to denounce and prosecute these people to the fullest extent of the law, make it so that they have no place in our society whatsoever, and they cannot show their faces. I also want to talk about far-left militancy and terrorism. It also appears that the Dayton shooter was somebody who ascribed to far-left beliefs and who acted, really was just a mentally deranged person. This also comes after we've seen the Antifa attack on an ICE facility in Washington, and of course the beatings in Portland. These are not the same thing. White nationalist terrorism is far worse than this. But what I want to point out here is that we need to confront militancy online in the same exact manner. And that's what we have to do with the FBI. The FBI needs to step up and prosecute these people the exact same way that we dealt with ISIS. I covered ISIS for a long, long time. Basically, the FBI realized that this is one of the largest domestic terror threats to the United States. They geared thousands of agents online in order to interact with these people, basically lure them into potential terrorist attacks, and bait them into arriving at airports or going to gun shops or expressing their desire to attack at a facility so they could be hit with material support of terrorism and they would be locked away for decades and decades. That's exactly what we have to do here. We need the full force of the United States government to come down upon these people. We need to recognize it as one of the biggest threats to American safety, and that is really the only rational response that both sides would be able to agree upon. And it is shameful what the president and this administration has done in order to gut the elements of the FBI that are tracking white nationalist terrorism. For so long, the right was obsessed with equivocating on white nationalist terrorism because they thought that it was a way in order to divert resources away from the fight against Islamic terrorism. They are both existential threats to the United States. They are both things that we must confront to the fullest extent of the law. And I repeat again, the onus is upon those on the right to draw the biggest barrier between between the white nationalist terrorists. And I would also call upon anybody who believes who shares beliefs with some of these left-wing militants in order to draw the same boundary. And that's really all I have to say about it, Crystal.
I mean, I applaud you for your honesty always, Saagar, and your courage always. Thank you for pointing out that there is no equivalence between...
No, they're not the same moral force. We have a shameful racial history in this country. There's no getting... I mean, the idiocy of so many people on the right... People right now, I want to talk about this because it drives me insane, which is there are people on Twitter who are saying that because this El Paso shooter mentioned environmentalism in his manifesto, he's an eco-terrorist.
Oh my God,
Shut
I hadn't even seen
up.
that.
He is a white nationalist terrorist. This is a racial attack on our country. However, and this is what I do want to get to, and I think that what they will always say is, you're only trying to go after the white nationalists, you don't want to attack the eco or the far left terrorists. I'm saying, for political purposes and for the purposes of keeping us all safe, attack them both.
Sure,
dedicate just as much research. If you're an online person who is propagating violence in our streets, as we saw in Portland, or a literal terrorist attack, as we saw in El Paso, I want the FBI to use all the powers necessary of the United States government to destroy you.
Well, and it's not just the FBI. I mean, the white nationalist threat is a global, it is a transnational threat that is on the rise, in particular in the West, and they find each other online. The Norway killer inspired the Christchurch killer, inspired this El Paso.
It's a lot like ISIS.
Absolutely.
I see
and
the
look,
same
but
characteristics.
It's not just the FBI. Twitter has been terrified, as one example, to do anything real about this, the same way that they shut down so many ISIS accounts without hesitation. And why are they afraid? because so many of the people who would be shut down are on the right, and they are already getting attacked for looking politicized. They need to man up here, woman up here, and obliterate any accounts that are sharing this kind of rhetoric and participating in this kind of hate. Need to be gone, even if people on the right get their feelings hurt by it. Get over it.
I mean,
just
what needs to happen really is the Trump administration and the DOJ should just give them the cover and order them to do it. That's probably the best that could possibly be done here. And I'm looking.
My hopes are not high there.
Yeah, my hopes aren't particularly high. Let's see what the president has to see at 10 a.m. In the meantime, there's a saying in Texas for the El Paso shooter: "Let the lights dim in Huntsville." That's where we have our death penalty facility. So next on Rising, everything is bigger in Texas, including the stakes for its electoral votes in 2020.
Texas Democratic Party's executive director is going to share the strategy to flip the red state to blue. And of course, he's going to weigh in on this horrific tragedy that unfolded in El Paso. That when Rising returns.